The views, comments, stories, and opinions shared within this podcast are our own, or those of our guests, and in no way represent the views of the companies, associations, or organizations that any of us may work for or represent. All stories, events, and tales shared within this episode may or may not have happened in the manner in which they were told. They may or may not have even happened at all. The details have been changed to protect the innocent and the guilty alike. This is Squawk Ident.
Kansas City, American 1855. We need to declare an emergency. Sounds like we had a bird strike and loss of airspeed indicator.
American 1855, the Insulet Airport is at 3 to maybe 4 o'clock at about 8 miles data strike.
Insight.
American 1855, Roger. You're part of it. Well, you clear visual approach runway 1 right.
Clear for visual 1 right, American 1855.
American 1855, let me know what you need.
Around for run 1 right and run a checklist.
1855, wind at time, sold, fuel, and heading.
We got about 100 minutes of fuel, and what was the next question?
Setting hazmat and souls on board.
No hazmat and 139 souls on board. We're going to head for 1 right and plan on landing. Checklist is complete.
Best of the best. We'll make it better. We'll make it better.
Do you know anything about planes?
You're listening to Squawk Ident, an aviation podcast that explores the many pathways to an aviation profession, the challenges that a professional aviator can expect in today's marketplace, and we share many stories along the way. I'm your host, Aviator Tony, a professional airline pilot currently flying for a U.S. legacy airline with close to 20 years on the flight line. Welcome aboard Flight 122 of the Squawk Ident podcast, recorded on the 21st of November, 2022, from the Aviator Sound Studios from somewhere in Southern California. On today's flight, we are joined by an aviator whose parents exposed him to aviation at the tender age of 5 years old. That is when he was able to witness the awesome display of air power by the U.S. Navy Blue Angels F-4 Phantom team. In his teen years, he joined the Civil Air Patrol, took high school classes on aviation, and grew his addiction of aviation in the process. As flight training costs started to skyrocket, his aviation passion was set aside in order to pay the bills within the emerging computer technology market. He later started his own computer software company that took off. Despite his financial success in tech, his addiction to aviation never subsided. Fast forward to today, his winding journey has led him to the present day where he flies an Embraer 175 for Sandpiper Airlines, an alias to his employer, an American flag-yielding, wholly owned regional airline. We are honored to have him as our featured guest today. He is Mr. Mike Airhart. We will also discuss $100,000 signing bonuses, botched drug tests, the Boeing 737 versus Grey Goose event, and where in the world is Captain Keith? So stick with us as we cover all this and more on this, the 122nd episode of the Squawk Ident podcast. Joining us today is an exceptional aviator and Squawk Ident co-host. He is a U.S. Navy Reserve's Chief Information Systems Technician, a certified flight instructor, and an Embraer 175 pilot for Sandpiper Regional, the alias to one of our legacy airlines' wholly owned regional airlines. Joining us from his home in Temecula, California, where he has been moving furniture after a 4-day trip. Help me in welcoming to the show, Mr. Alex D. Alex, how you doing?
I'm exhausted, to say the least. Got done with the 4-day yesterday, and of course, the go-home day always seems to be like a nightmare. You don't put that out in the world, and yet it still was a nightmare getting home yesterday. But I'm home. I had to move some furniture around today, and a little late getting on the podcast, but I'm here. I'm here. I'm excited that we finally got Mike on the show.
Yeah, it wasn't me that was late this time.
I know. I apologize. I was only like 15 minutes late, but I was able to get the bed moved out of one room and into another, and both of them set up and everything good. Once we get done recording, I gotta obviously go make the beds because that's what you do.
Yeah, always make your bed.
But
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're here, and we'll talk a little bit about your flying that you've been up to. Quite a bit of flying that we've all been doing. It's been kind of crazy to try to keep up with it all, but that is the beginning of the holiday season. Well, also joining us today is another exceptional aviator and Squawk co-host. He is an OSU Pistol Pete loving grad, an ASL linguist, the creator and director of the Aviation Business Information Board on Facebook, a cadet pilot mentor, a new dad, and a DFW Airbus pilot at Legacy Airlines. From his podcast studio, where he is juggling diapers, holiday flight schedules, and mentoring, should I say poisoning, young cadets for the Legacy Airlines Cadet Program. From somewhere in Roanoke, Texas, please help us in welcoming to the show, Mr. Kyle J. Kyle, how you doing?
Doing great, Tony. How about yourself?
Keeping busy, dealing with life. What what more can I say?
As we all are, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Just been working, been watching the little one grow up, getting ready for the holidays coming up, and keeping up with our cadet mentees and watching their journey in aviation.
Yeah. Well, with all the hiring that Legacy Airlines has been doing, and also Sandpiper and all the other wholly owns, it's been really a busy thing. The training department, the HR department, the cadet program, the mentors. It's been crazy. And I feel like we are absolutely, this industry is just bulging, and, the pressure is rising, and this pressure cooker is on fire. And I just pray that it continues to be contained and nothing major happens. We've talked about this many times before on the podcast, where as flight schedules get more hectic, the holiday seasons come, stress levels go up, and that really does play a huge toll on not just pilots, but everyone involved in the industry. So, I'm very grateful and thankful that we have you doing what you do and mentoring all the young pilots that out there that are just getting started, getting their feet wet in the industry. So thank you.
Yep, no problem. And it's going to be pilots that we're all going to be flying with someday. So trying to point them in the right direction and keep them on the right track to get here as quick as possible. So everybody needs the help right now.
Yeah. I too have been crazy busy, but I haven't been flying that much. And I know you guys know because we've been going back and forth, but it's been almost more than 3 weeks since the last podcast. And the reason for that was that I was selected to be on a jury on a criminal trial in San Bernardino County. And I ended up as the jury foreman. I go, oh, you're a pilot. Oh, you should be the foreman. It actually was a very interesting case. At first, I thought, man, I really don't want to be here. And the judge expressed it very clearly. He's like, if anyone here feels like they actually want to be here, we're going to question that, because nobody should want to be here. Nobody wants to do jury duty. And
he's not wrong.
Yeah, right. He was absolutely right. And the lawyers were like, do you want to be here today? And the judge goes, don't ask him that. None of them want to be here.
I mean, he's not wrong. No one wants to be at jury duty, but
at the end of it, though, after 4 weeks of trial, I really found it to be one of those events in your life that, you've done it at least once. I found it very interesting. And yes, there was an airport involved. They actually had evidence presented for a very small, untowered GA airport. And here I am listening to the lawyers give it descriptions, and they had the investigator for the DA give descriptions of the airport. And I'm sitting there nodding my head. Can't say anything as a juror, and just like, nope, that's not right. That's not right. I'm thinking maybe I should start a consulting company that gives evidence of like just facts about airports and rotating beacons and what's visible, and what kind of fence barriers are around these airports, and how is it monitored, and because they were like doing their best, but I'm like, yeah, it's not really accurate. But anyway, it was an interesting trial, and that's a whole other topic of discussion. But I did get back to flying. This was my first trip. I just got back last night, like a little bit after midnight. And yeah, it was like riding a bike. It felt really good. And out of the 4 legs, I got 2 landings in. And I should have put money down because one was better than the other. And even the captain looked at me. He's like, "When's the last time you flew?" I was like, "Well, blind squirrel gets a nut once in a while, right?" So, yeah, it's been fun getting back to it. And now I'm looking at a very, very busy schedule in the next 4 weeks. So, yeah, bear with us, ladies and gentlemen. The holiday season is a-coming. Well, we're also all very excited because, as we mentioned in today's opener, we have on the show a remarkable aviator that has found a way to make his passion for aviation and an aviation career a reality. Despite the many financial hurdles that can limit many aspiring pilots out there, he's here to share it all with us, his journey that led him to a promising airline career. So please help us in welcoming to the Squawk Ident podcast, Mr. Mike Airhart. Mike,
hey, thanks.
How you doing?
I'm good. You're making me blush over here. You're making this sound so so important. But yeah, thanks for having me on.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. Alex, you and I and Alex sat down for some Mexican food. I forget what episode that was. We kind of talked about it. We recorded a little on the spot. Alex is typing away feverishly. His thumbs are smoking on fire right now. I'm trying to go back and get that episode. But we talked about having you on the show, and that's when we met for the first time. Yeah. And you and Alex were in training together.
It seems like Sandpiper. A lifetime ago.
Yeah. Did your training?
Right?
It would have been June or even May.
It was just before Sims. It was when we had the 3 or 4 days off before Sims.
Right. God, it seems like a whole different world now.
Yeah, and it's funny that you say that because this career, when you're starting out, and correct me if you feel differently, when you're starting out, regardless of your age, which is another topic that we're going to talk about here in a little bit, but regardless of your age, when you're starting out, it's all so fresh. It's all so new. Even if you have a very long history in GA, once you get into the airline environment, you're learning so many new things. You're learning about standard operating procedures or SOPs. You're learning about the regulations associated with airlines and how they're different from, say, a Part 91 operation. And you're learning about all the nuances of running on a schedule like that. And it's almost like time flies faster and faster and faster. And you look back and go, I just, want to get in my 172 and putz around the pattern a few times because, so.
No, you don't. You can't fly a 172. I was there.
You have some evidence of that, don't you, Alex?
Yeah, I think 15 years between handling the yoke of a 172 gives me a very good excuse to not be able to flare appropriately, mister.
Hey, I didn't say anything about your flying. You could fly perfectly fine. Landing? Yeah, I should have put money on it.
Yeah, you should have. Hey, but my second one was good.
Alex, where was the 50, 40, 30 call out? You gotta
no RA.
Oh, that's what I forgot to do for him. He's just used to that. Oh, and he also didn't hear the airplane telling him that he's a retard when he was ready to land. So that was probably why he flared at 30 feet.
Yeah.
It wasn't 30. Exaggerating. It was like 4.
That's the 172 equivalent of 30 feet.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Well, we have an exciting show today. We're going to talk. We're going to get into your journey, Mike. And I just wanted to get everyone introduced, get the show rolling, because I wanted to catch up with someone we haven't seen in it feels like a year. Kyle, where have you been, man?
Flying and being a dad and watching our cadets grow and succeed. And they're in all sorts of different parts of the aviation community right now. My youngest one, as I call it, just finished CFI and have them all over from Alaska flying Beech 99. I think it's Beech 99 to right seat of Beechjet, right seat of a Challenger 604, instructing They're just trying to get all their time as quickly as possible to get on with one of our wholly owned regionals.
Yeah, and so this cadet program, just for those that may have not been listening to our podcast for a very long period of time, or maybe you're new to the podcast, the cadet program is a program that Legacy Airlines and also their wholly owns have versions of, and it's a way to get the help to, once you're accepted into this program, to get the counseling, get the resources for an expedited way to build time, to get your education, to get your certifications, so that you can get a job in a 121 operation as soon as possible. And the cadet program, if accepted to these programs, it really does have just a multitude of resources. One of those resources is what you do. You are a pilot mentor. How often do you speak with these cadets, as we call them?
Well, I try talking to my cadets when they're first starting out with all their primary training at least once a week. Shoot everybody text messages, just making sure that they're on the right track. If they had any issues with instructors, airplanes, check rides, finding a DPE, which has been we've had some issues with that here within the last year, but just making sure they're on the right track to succeed. And as they've been getting their CFIs and having a real job, I'll probably check in with them once every 2 weeks and just seeing how they're doing. And go from there. Like I said, they're all over the place. So my graduate cadets have already they're almost about to hit 1,500 hours. So their biggest decision right now is what wholly owned regional they want to go to. And with everybody backed up with training, it's gonna looks like it's gonna be a little longer than expected, but that's okay. They have jobs right now. They're making some money, and they're sitting in a good spot right now for one of our regionals. Yeah. Now the cadet program is hard to get into. Let's not mince words. I've spoken with plenty of potential pilots and flight attendants as well. There's a lot of flight attendants over here at Legacy Airlines that have been flying as a flight attendant for years and starting to maybe like somebody they know or a pilot that they've met has said, "Hey, I'll take you up in a GA airplane," and they go up and they start taking their private pilot license ratings. They have their logbooks and they're studying, and they like to come up to the flight deck whenever possible and just like look around, and you can tell right away their interest and their passion. It's very visible because they actually care, versus the flight attendants that come in the flight deck and they're like, they just want to get out of there as soon as possible, so they can go back. The number one thing, Tony, that we see for the cadet program, what scares a lot of people away, is the cost. And a lot of people don't have that type of money to be putting down for flight training when nothing's guaranteed at the end of the day. So it's a lot of money. However, the good outweighs the bad over the course of your career at an airline, going up the rankings to repay back all that. But with the cadet program, we help that individual get through flight training. We help pay for the loans, help co-sign the loans, and then we point them in the right direction after they get all their ratings and their CFIs, and being able to keep moving up the chain and eventually show up to eventually come to the legacy carrier. Yeah. Now, it's a great program, and that's the thing. It's a fantastic program. A lot of people want to get in. Last time we spoke with, I believe it was Jennifer Bloom, yes, who told us all about the program. She's a recruiter. She told us they had thousands and thousands of applications, and they only select so many because there's only so many slots available. And the big portion of that selection process is they want to see that the cadet or the potential cadet has a passion, a true passion or true dedication, and they're not just like, well, yeah, man, I just want to fly. My dad used to fly and whatever. So what are other maybe selling points that you can give us that could help someone who would like to get in the program? What's the best thing that they can do to really sell themselves for the program? Well, the biggest thing, like you said, Tony's the willingness to come and you want to differ yourself from others. We've seen at interviews a lot of these newer cadets when they interview, they're not as serious as you would think, because when they come in and they interview, you actually come in the schoolhouse and you interview. You got to think we got a lot of kids out of high school to just finishing a college with another degree that not dressed for the occasion. It's an interview. If you're not wearing a suit, you're not coming prepared with the questions. We're not going to take you serious. But that and the other thing I would like to mention is having a resume. A lot of kids will just throw something together. They don't look through it very thorough. Just having that resume to look at, and they want somebody that's not only interested in it, but it's dedicated to the program, because it's a fire hose training. You're starting out day one with zero time, and they want you to have your CFI within a year and a half. Which is, if you're studying every day, flying 2-3 days a week, it's easy to do. However, it's not we're not holding your hand during training. You got to want to do it. You got to want to finish it. Yes, test and reading and all that, for most people, it's not as fun. However, just getting all that knocked out and starting to fly, that's where all the fun comes in. But everybody had to do it. So
yeah,
just the biggest thing is going to be the willingness and dedication, and just showing that you want to be there.
Yeah.
And then if you have any to stand out from other cadet interviews, if you have a hobby, they want to also see that you have a life outside of flying. Eagle Scout or some sort of extracurricular activities that you have had, just shows you that you're a well-rounded human being.
Yeah. And being members of organizations out there, OBAP, Women in Aviation, whatever you relate to, if you just join online, go to a conference or go to an event, be a member, and that truly, I believe, also helps that extracurricular. You're not just showing up to the airport, flying your flight time, and you look at your logbook and go, "Look, I have my time in my logbook. That qualifies me." Well, yeah, that qualifies you. That doesn't represent you. That doesn't set you apart. We want to see those, like we've said it here a million times on the show, we want to see those bullet points on the resume. The flight time is the minimum. The flight time is just a meter to do you qualify. Now we want to see all the little bullet points, all the little organizations, all the things you've done that set you apart and make you unique, because we want to hire unique people that have a passion for this. We mentioned earlier the episode where we had a cadet recruiter, and yourself was on the show, and we had 2 cadets on the show as well. That was a flight, what was that, 66. Rona, 6-minute flights, and the Cadet Program. That's when we had Jennifer Bloom, we had Travis, and we had William on the show. It was your second time being on our show as well. Yes. Have you kept up with Travis and William? Have they been accepted into the program?
Oh yeah, they're all finished. Both of them are finished. Travis is down in Florida, Tampa area, I believe. He's instructing for a school down there, and he's flying a right seat in a beach jet right now.
Cool.
He said he's out flying his CFI stuff. He does a lot of, I guess they do a lot of New York turns. So he's flying about 90 hours a month in that beach jet, which is remarkable for any sort of private 135 flying. That's a lot of flying. And then, let's see. And then the other one, he is CFIing in William. He is CFIing in Charleston, and he's talking about going into the Navy. Was the last time I was talking to him.
Nice.
Getting a Navy slot, I think, for a Navy reserve unit. Mm-hmm. I guess they still call him a guard unit for the Navy, but
it's a good man right there.
That's
the Navy. I like
that's
him.
where he's looking at right now. So last I talked to him, they're both of them are flying a lot and trying to get their flight time and get over here.
Yeah. Well, see, we all have these unique journeys on how we got where we ended up. And for most of us, the journey continues on until the day they put us in the ground in a wood box. A pilot with wings is always a pilot with wings, regardless of your background and your history. And it's so exciting to hear the success and this time building availabilities. I mean, a lot of the pilots, the senior pilots that I've flown with that haven't been in any kind of GA flying for 20, 30 years, they ask me questions. They're like, oh, well, do you know, how are they time building? They're not flying checks around anymore. They're not flying newspapers around anymore. How do you do it? And that's what's exciting. And we're going to hear about Mike's journey. Mike's journey is very unique as well. And let's get into that. So, Mike, just again, I want to say thank you for being on the show. I had really enjoyed it before the show. We had a little bit of time to talk about your journey, and it's very interesting. I guess the main question for someone who's changing careers, as did I, is that how do you do this at an older age? Is it too late? If you don't jump in this right out of high school or right out of college, is it too late? Because it's a timed career. At 65, at least right now, at the age of 65, the FAA has determined that you must retire. Out of 121, you cannot fly an airline after the age of 65. So sometimes it pushes people away from potentially pursuing this career. But your career started really at the age of 5. Tell me about that first experience at watching the Blue Angels flying the F4 Phantom.
Yeah, you're really dating me when we talk about the F4, because that's obviously been quite a while. At 5 years old, when you feel the rumble of F4s, 5 of them, 10 large fuel consuming afterburning jet engines, you're never quite the same. It changes you forever. I actually still have the program here. It was the Lake Charles Air Show from October 1st, 1972. Still have it, have Blue Angel signatures on there. Yeah. And that really cemented it. My family was in Lake Charles at the time. My mother was especially keen on aviation. My father liked it as well, and took me out to the air shows, and I've been staring at the sky ever since. So it is not a job, that is for sure. It is absolutely in my blood.
Yeah. And, I think we all have had a similar story. When you're young, you're just so impressed. I mean, most kids, they like tractors or trains, or semi-trucks or race cars or something, dirt bikes and airplanes, right? It's just part of being a kid, especially a young male. That is the social order of things. And now, in a modern world we're living, it doesn't matter if you're a boy or a girl. If you love these things, it's okay. And, and which is great, because we need to get everybody into this industry.
Absolutely.
Now is the time. The floodgates are opening. The jobs are plentiful. Let's do it. But your journey wasn't a straight line.
It wasn't. I mean, the addiction was from the standpoint of, a lot of people do, Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, and all of that. And those are, good organizations and good experience for young people. I actually went into Civil Air Patrol because that was about the only way we could, my family could afford having me involved in aviation. And that was a great experience. I definitely enjoyed, the preteen and teen years in the Civil Air Patrol. And while I didn't actually get to flight train with them, I got to be around the airplanes and do community service and all that. So that helped even more cement that interest in it. As you mentioned, there was a couple of years of aviation classes in high school, which was pretty unique at the time, but it was mostly history, fundamentals, not even really formal ground school. So it wasn't as formalized as like some of the cadet programs are today. But most people back then were tracking through the military. And I looked at it, and it wasn't a realistic option for me. My eyesight wasn't perfect, and that's kind of what they wanted it to be back then, so many years ago in the 80s. And so that wasn't really an option. So I had to kind of put that on pause. I mean, I did some flying just out of college, soloed even, but really couldn't get involved until after I got a little bit more down the road with a little earning potentials in the IT industry. Did the software startup, and fortunately had a little bit of extra money and was able to hang around the airport and wash airplanes and do all that kind of hanger rat type thing in my 20s, when I didn't have any other real distractions other than just work and aviation. I managed to get my private, but then that even paused for a little bit while I focused on career and getting married and have a kid. And congratulations to Kyle on the relatively recent addition. That's awesome. That'll keep you busy. So did that, and IT, paid the bills. It just, there just wasn't a realistic way to have a family, to have a kid, and also go in and live on $15 an hour, which is what, I mean, Tony, you were, you went in through that time, and you knew what it was, how tough that was. And so it wasn't really an option. Back in 2001, I went ahead and I had the money. I bought a plane. I actually moved into an airport community in the Austin area. So that shows how addicted it was. I bought a house on a runway. In fact, I told my wife before we even got married, it's like, aviation is part of who I am. So we are at one point going to live at an airport. And she's like, okay, we can do that. So that worked out. But I ended up getting my instrument commercial and multi all in the span of probably 6 months.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Wrapped that up in the summer of 2001. And things changed.
Well, we all know where that's going.
Yeah. Things changed September 11th.
Yeah. Yeah. And it changed for everyone. I mean, I started a little bit after you, but same thing, private pilot license. And then as soon as I got that certificate in my hands, guess what? There's no flying for a couple of weeks. And it was a tragic time for our industry and for our country and for the world, really. So it's understandable how things kind of took a back seat. Now, in a little bit, I just want to back up a little bit. You were able to build time before that to get those ratings so quickly. As you mentioned, you were a hanger rat, and that involved, cleaning up, washing airplanes, doing the stuff you would do at a small GA airport just to be in the environment. Now, were you doing all this while you were also working in for yourself, with your software company?
I was, yeah. It was a group of 4 of us. We're all young 20-something-year-old guys, and we're doing nerd stuff. So we're working all hours, 7 days a week, and we'd take off when we could. And one of my partners was also interested in aviation, so we'd go out and we'd wash the airplanes. And fortunately, things were less expensive back then. Rental was way less expensive. Fuel was way less expensive. So we basically flew for cheap labor and gas, is what a lot of what we did. And then one of my early instructors, he's at Delta now. His dad bought him a Piper Apache and said, all right, go fly. And he was CFII and MEI. So his dad said, go fly, build his hours, since his dad was getting him on the path to getting to a legacy. And he basically let me get instruction in the multi for fuel. So since it wasn't really costing him anything, I bought the fuel and we cruised all over East Texas doing probably stupid things, flying at night in a Piper Apache, which now looking back as a ATP flying a nice airplane, I'm like, why did we do that?
Yeah.
Why? But we were young and stupid. So I was fortunate to have that opportunity.
Yeah.
You do anything for flight time, Mike. Anything for flight time.
Almost anything. We'll leave the anything up to Alex.
No, hey, almost anything is still where I caveat it. Okay, like
I would talk about that time.
Yeah. I mean, you know, $20 is $20. But hey.
Yeah, I love the, just a really quick off topic. I love those short, whatever you call those videos. I don't know, whatever they're called, shorts. And, the girl comes in and goes, hey, this guy in there said if I show him my boobs, she'd give me like 2 venti caramel frappuccinos. And she walks in with 2 caramel venti frappuccinos. And he goes, well, how did you, what? Pretty much that's the way it is with flying. You want to build that time. You want to get that magic number, that 1,500 hours. I love seeing these Instagram posts where these young men and women are posting on their laptop, 1,500, I finally made it, 1,500. Mm-hmm. I posted one the other day, 12,000.
If I wanted to be tacky, I could say I earned some of my hours on my back scrubbing the belly of an airplane.
There you go.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's too tacky, but when you're doing grunt work and you're happy to do it.
Well, you're washing airplanes and trading them for flight time. It's a good trade-off.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a good trade-off. What were you thinking, listener? Get your mind out of the gutter.
I will say one thing, and I didn't get to say it when Kyle was talking about the hiring and the cadets and everything. And this goes out to all the cadets listening and all that, the people who are just trying to get in that 1,250,000 hour mark. Do not get discouraged right now if you don't get a call back. Do not get discouraged because they are flooded with people. Do not get discouraged.
Yeah. Just keep swimming, man. Keep swimming.
Keep your head up, keep flying, keep going, and you will eventually get a call back from somebody. Do not get discouraged.
I just keep eating ramen noodles, man, because that's the way it was back in the day, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Ramen noodles and what they call pilot food, the cheesy crackers from the vending machine.
Mm-hmm.
Last year during COVID, all my mentees asked if they were going to have a job, and they're still working on instrument commercial, and I had told them this doesn't affect you. You just need to keep moving, and this is only affecting the people right now. So just keep moving and don't worry about it.
Well, and they have the gift of time too, right?
Yes.
So that's the thing.
Yep.
Is anybody in their late teens, early 20s that are considering this, they're going to go through downturns. There's no question, right? I mean, pretty much everybody flying today or recently retired, they went through at least 1 or 2 downturns, and they will too.
Yep. So, just keep on moving.
Yeah, keep moving forward. That's the only thing I can say. Keep moving forward.
That's it. So, Mike, you said that you fast forward to the early 2000s. You're living in Austin at that time.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and you moved into the airport home. Did you have an airplane?
Well, when you move into an airport home with a hangar, you kind of have to buy an airplane. So I got the house first, and then I got the airplane. And it was just a 172, which is, a good, inexpensive way to get going. Although it had upgraded, it had a 180 horse engine in it. So it was a little nicer, but certainly not a professional level airplane, but then just flew the wheels off of it, constantly flying. Again, gas was cheaper back then too. And when you can just get a wild hair at the last minute, decide you want to go fly, and you just roll it out and go, then you go. So 1 hour flight time for me probably only cost me an hour and a half worth of actual time, because I'm not driving to the airport, pulling the plane out, putting it back in, etc. So, yep.
Yeah. And when you own your own airplane, if you can swing the financial burdens of the maintenance cost, insurance costs, it really is a good investment, because when you finally decide to sell, 9 out of 10, you're going to be walking away with basically free flight time, because even if you sell it for the same amount, you just paid for the fuel and the maintenance, and you got all that flight time. A lot cheaper than having to rent an airplane and going to flight school, get an instructor, and getting checked out, and having to go through different class Bravos and sitting 20 minutes waiting for a clearance for takeoff, watching that Hobbs meter cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. And so, yeah, owning an airplane definitely has its advantages.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's it. You save a bunch of money per hour, but you do take on the risk, right? If you have a bad day and for some reason beyond your control, the engine craters itself, it could be devastating financially to somebody that, you know, might otherwise not have the resources to deal with it. So it's not for everybody, but if you can, it can be, if you're fortunate and things don't go the wrong way, it can definitely be the most affordable way. In fact, I've got a close friend that I jokingly say he turned a ultralight weed hopper into a career, actually where you started, because he was really good at buying and selling airplanes and trading up. And he eventually traded up to a twin commander, flew that enough to get his multi hours in the books and then get hired on at Eagle back in the day.
Yeah.
Back when they existed, their own standalone entity.
Yeah. Yeah. And your career progression in networking and in IT, it excelled, didn't it?
I was fortunate. I managed to work for some of the industry's top companies. I did work for IBM for a while after we sold the software company. And then I worked for a company called Cisco Systems. A lot of excellent people I worked with, really enjoyed that. Then was able to jump over to a telecommunications company and take a leadership position. It's progressed up through that. And it was a blessing. It was a financial blessing. It was also a blessing from the fact that it gave me the opportunity to work with not only great people, but also lead great people and learn leadership and have staff, and really, really enjoyed that. And in a lot of ways, didn't want to leave it, but sometimes things change. And life says, hey, it's time to reevaluate and see what you want to do. And that happened in July of 21.
Mm-hmm.
July of 21.
21, yeah. And so you found yourself without a job after holding a very prestigious position, making very good money, enough money to make this hobby a reality and give you this opportunities that some people don't have, that you were able to get an airport home, buy some airplanes, go flying, build your time, and not have a time crunch behind it going, oh, I got to get it all done because I got to get a job to pay all this back. And you were very fortunate in that you had that. But why? And I'm sure there are plenty of captains and senior pilots out here going, why the hell would you leave a job where you can be home every night, making very good money that you can just go fly when you want to on your own accord, buying airplanes? And why would you leave all that and pursue a career in an airline where you're just a part number?
Yeah, it's a very fair question. When you've worked a job where you're responsible 24/7 for a bunch of people and a bunch of areas of responsibility, and you can get woken up at any time, being able to enjoy the lifestyle that you guys now know, where when the parking brake set on go home day, there's really nothing to think about, or at least nothing to stress about until it's time to report for duty for your next trip. And that is really a nice side benefit. But then until you've been in the flight deck looking out at 39,000 feet at everything nature delivers to you, both the gorgeous blue sky as well as sunsets like behind Kyle, or even crazy weather with lightning going everywhere, until you get to see that day in, day out, I wouldn't trade it. I wish I could have made the change before, because money can't buy that. It's really something unique, and I don't regret it at all. And I'm making a whole new set of great friends, and I work with some really fun people. Yes, Alex is waving. Yeah, so it's been a great trade-off. But I guess kind of to bring a point to the listener, if you are older than average, if you're in your 40s or your 50s, don't be afraid to take the chance to follow this. If you think this is something's in a passion for you, it's a passion for you. If you look up when you see hear an airplane fly over and you're curious about it, or maybe you're even nerding out looking at ADS-B to see what it is, don't be afraid to pursue that, whether you're already a private pilot or maybe have your ratings like I did. And so it was a pretty short hop for me. Or if you're just thinking about it, at the end of the day, we all go the same way. We all go the same eventual we leave this earth in some form or fashion, but have you really lived until you've check those boxes you want to do? And this is one I've always wanted to do. I wanted to burn Jet A. And sure, I guess if I had stayed working in IT, I probably could have bought an Albatross or something like that and paid for my own Jet A. But it's really special to get paid to burn Jet A, and then to see the people's faces when they're leaving and they're telling you thank you. And it's special. And you guys know that because you're doing it. And now I'm doing it, and I'm blessed.
Yeah. And you're doing it, as we mentioned earlier, not as some 20-something-year-old. You had a fruitful, long career. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you own some pretty remarkable airplanes. I was kind of looking at the list that you had sent me. Was it a Star Duster?
That was my first experience into tailwheel.
That's biplane. You bought a biplane.
Absolutely.
Did you get your tailwind endorsement or?
I did. I would not recommend starting out in a high performance biplane for tailwheel. I did go take some tailwheel instruction from an amazing, very seasoned acrobatic pilot, Charlie Jurek, and he was one of those old school instructors that'll smack you upside the head if you do something stupid, but you learn a lot really quick. So I was really loved flying with him, and then that helped prepare me. And then actually another former Eagle pilot, Tom McMeans, helped me out learning the Star Duster, and that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that airplane a lot.
Yeah, and then you were buying and selling 172s, and you ended up selling one of them to buy a V-tail Bonanza, the Doctor Killer.
Good thing I'm not a doctor, right?
And that's one of my favorite GA airplanes. I just think that it's a very good-looking airplane. How was that airplane? Do you still own the V-tail?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I can't imagine selling it. I didn't really understand all the Bonanza. What's so special about it? Because we had them at the airport I used to live at in Austin, and I never really understood it until I actually got to fly one and build some time in it. And it is just a really enjoyable flying airplane. It's actually very easy to land. It makes you look like a better pilot than you really are. But they are kind of the Cadillacs of the GA. They're older. They still make the Bonanza in the G36, and they're well out of reach financially of me. But as Kyle can tell you, Beechcraft are really nice airplanes. They're good, honest airplanes. And quite frankly, I felt like I owed it to myself to behave as a more professional pilot when I bought that airplane. It is faster. And I wanted to communicate on the radio better. I wanted to operate in the national airspace system better, and just kind of elevate myself. And I think it helped.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to, it's like August 2020. You decide to leave the Austin area and come over to the DFW metro area, and you bought another home there, also at an airport.
That's right.
And so, what's your that's where you are now, right? And your hangar space is how many airplanes can you keep in there?
We've got 5 in there right now.
Okay.
Which airport, Mike?
I'm in Prop Wash.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we have a couple of hangars at Northwest Regional there at 52 Fox.
Yep, you're 12 miles away from me. Yep. Right around the corner. You and I'll have to go catch drinks. I guess we got the California contention on the other part of the video call, and then you and I. So it's
yeah. Well, it's a matter of time. Kyle will be joining you, and who knows? Maybe I will too. So here you are. You're the telecom company decided to restructure your services. They felt were no longer available, and you found yourself with all this opportunity in the GA community. You're flying airplanes, you're buying and selling airplanes, you live on an airport. I mean, you're living the dream that most airline pilots say, when I retire, that's what I want to do. And you're doing it, and you're not even there. You're not even looking at airlines. You're just loving the aviation, looking up when a jet flies over, and a jet falls over. I got Latam Peru on my mind. Scrub that. And you're sitting there, just in awe every time a jet flies overhead. So you indicated that you kind of lost your passion for IT at that point and decided that the lifestyle of being in a professional environment with IT was not for you, and you decided to try professional aviation. How did that work at the age of 54? You said, you know what? I still got time. I'm going to do this.
Yeah, great question. And I don't think it could have happened 10 years ago, maybe even not 5 years ago. We're just in such a unique situation the industry's in, where so many pilots are needed, for a multitude of reasons that I'm sure you've dedicated podcast time on. It was unprecedented, and it just made sense because I already had the 1,500 plus hours. I already had the commercial instrument multi. But even if I hadn't, I could have gone and pursued it and knocked it out pretty quickly. A good friend of mine who actually went through Eagle, and then he's now at another major in the Metroplex. He said, look, get on with the 121. Go through a 121 training program at a regional. He said, doesn't matter which one. He said, even if you have to commute to it, just apply to all of them and see who will take you. And go through that. And if it turns out not to be for you, you will still enjoy the benefits of learning high quality, standardized training and how the crew concept works together. And I had talked to some 91 and 135 operators and things like that, and I just wasn't competitive there from the standpoint that they all wanted, thousands of hours of jet time and things like that. Not to say they were getting it, but that's what they wanted. And so I applied it at multiple 121 regionals, and Sandpiper was one of a couple of them that got back with me and that I interviewed with, and they were honestly the belle of the ball. That was it's like already here in the Metroplex, and everything I could see, it seemed like a good group of people and well run, and right up under the wing of your legacy, and absolutely, I jumped at the chance. Was a little bit floored. I went in through the interview and I was like, wow, okay, this is really happening. And it did. And I did not look back.
Yeah, and this is a popular question I ask for all the people that have gone through Sandpiper or one of the others. What was the time frame from when you submitted your application on airline apps to when they called you and said, I have a class date for you?
It was pretty quick. I started submitting in January of 22 and ended up with a January interview. It might have been late December 21 when I actually started filling out airline apps, but I interviewed in January, then went to ATP, CT, and I found out then there was a group of 12 of us went through the interview process. They gave CJOs to 11 of us, I believe. As you can probably guess, I was the elder of the group.
Number one pick, baby.
Yeah. Sure, we'll go with that. And ATP, CTP after that in February. And then March 10th, 47 of us showed up at the hotel. And that's when I met Alex. And I could tell that we were clearly going to be the troublemakers of class.
We met in CTP. You were.
That's right, ATP, CTP. Yep.
I passed along my CTP or the ATP written binder to you guys.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's,
And for the listeners out there that may not be in aviation, just to clarify, CJO, conditional job offer, it's what they'll give you, and they'll say, okay, sign this if you want the job here, or promise the next class date we're going to reach out to you. So you get a conditional job. Doesn't mean you have the job. It just means if all the conditions are met, you'll get the job, you'll get the class date. And part of that condition is that you get your ATP. Now, you can't just go and take a test like I did. Like when I didn't even have 1,500 hours, I had 300 hours. But you could take the written as soon as you had satisfied the requirements to take the written ATP. And I took the written ATP, and I think it was good for 2 years or something like that. And so as long as you got a job within the 2 years, that written satisfies the written portion of the ATP process. And then when you got hired on with an airline, when you took your check ride and got type rated in that aircraft, they gave you two things. They gave you an ATP certificate, or actually, in my case, back then, I was a commercially rated pilot with a type rating as a SIC, second in command type rating. And then when they changed the rules that if you're going to get, if you have a job at an airline, a 121 operator, you had to be ATP certified. So of course, by then, most everybody that was flying for the airline, not everyone, but most everyone, had the minimum 1,500 hours. So when you went back for your next training cycle, you were taking a Fed ride, a check ride, and you would get either a restricted ATP or you would get an ATP with an SIC type rating. And that was very stressful at the time. Now, they don't have all that. It's just straight ATP. You've got to have that in your hand. Mm-hmm. So for you and Alex and anyone that's going through an airline environment now, if you don't have previous experience, the airline in this case gives you the air transport pilot certificate, and it's a certified training program, the ATP CTP. And you'll go and Alex, I remember we talked about that on a previous show. 7 days, you got some 3 days in a simulator, you got some 7.3 time, you got the Airbus time, you got the Embraer 175 time, and you get your feet wet in all these different platforms. And then at the conclusion of this training cycle, you'll take the written part. Then they'll give you a class date at the airline for your new hire class. And when you finally take your check ride on your last event there, that's when you are presented with a temporary airman certificate, and you'll get your air transport pilot rating with a second in command, or actually ATP, right, for that aircraft. So it's a big process. It's a big deal. And the fact that, like you said, it's like drinking from a fire hose. So always be ready, always be in the books, dedicate yourself. This process goes very fast. You know, we're talking months and you're out on the line. We're going to hear all about your 121 experience, how Sandpiper was the best possible case for you. And we'll also talk about the $100,000 signing bonuses that they're giving now, some botched drug tests and how to deal with that, and bird strikes. All after the break. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Well, we've been talking with Mike about his journey in aviation and the windy road he took to get to a regional airline. Are you 54 now?
55 now.
55 now.
Yeah, turn the page on that calendar again.
So 55 years young. You have 10 years left, at least for now.
For now.
The projections are that you will probably upgrade in the next 12 to 18 months, depending on your schedule. And you could very well retire as a Embraer 175 captain, making low six figures, maybe even more, depending. Well, right now, you guys are probably making $300,000 a year with all your critical coverage and stuff. But is there a potential for you to do the flow? Are they projecting that you might make it over here before 10 years is up?
You know, honestly, I don't even look at that yet. I've enjoyed my time so far, and I'd like to stick it out long enough to get several thousand hours of turbine and, upgrade as fast as I can and get at least 1,000 turbine PIC. The crystal ball is so hard to know. I mean, I guess I could flow, but I would be guaranteed if it flows as things are today, I would retire as an FO at Legacy. And I'm not sure if I want to do that. So it's not as clear. And quite frankly, our senior captains and I didn't know if you wanted to.
I was just going to say upgrade time right now at the Legacy is less than 3 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Just some food for thought.
Kyle and I could be 4 stripers right now if we wanted to.
Nice.
we might be forced 4 stripers in the future here, but we'll see what happens.
Really?
I gotcha.
Wow.
And that's the thing is that's changing so fast, right? It's so much has changed that I'm in that stage. I've got 224 hours now in the airplane after IOE, and I'm just trying to focus on learning what I've got in front of me and be good at it and learn from these captains, because I'm getting a pretty good mix of some of them are newer captains that just upgrade, and some of them I just flew with number 13 in Dallas and had a great experience and learn from him. So I'm just in that learning phase. So I'm not I know some of my peers are automatically looking over the fence, looking to exit anywhere they can. And I mean, that's fine. I get it. They're in their 20s. Me, it's a good place. And if the flow works, the flow works.
Yeah.
If something else happened that we can't predict right now, and maybe we all come together as one big happy family, I'd be super happy about that.
Yeah. Well, we talked about the Endeavor and Delta and their unions that they got together. The ALPA union got together, their MECs, and they had this letter of agreement that they've signed saying that, hey, if the company decides to staple us or whatever and merge our certificates together in order to, mutually benefit each other, both the regional, as in terms of a guaranteed number or a position at the main line, and the main line, a guaranteed pilot for their needs, then they would be both willing to do it. They'd figure out a way. We have not done that here at the legacy side, although there is a lot of movement happening behind the scenes that, of course, they never tell us until we read about it in the paper. Kyle probably has his ear and can't really talk about much because it would be all hearsay. But, the fact that things are moving, things are changing, and the hub and spoke model of the regional airline industry, we've been saying this for over 2 decades, that it cannot sustain itself. We just don't have qualified applicants at this very moment. And financially, it's starting to be more of a burden for the mainline wholly owned carriers. That you're really going to pay $200,000 or $300,000 a year for a guy flying a 75 passenger jet versus the FO that's flying 200 passengers around making less money. It just doesn't really calculate. And there will be a time here in the near future where we're going to see a lot more integration. And Kyle, what have you heard that you can tell us that would support that or refute it?
From connections and articles that I've read and posted on our Facebook page, I can see everybody integrating here in the next 3 to 5 years, and it's just due to the fact that there's no pilots, and that goes back to late 2000s, or I guess it was before that when the regional model came out. And, we can pay somebody not a whole lot of money to get flying covered. It's backfired over the years because back when you could pay a pilot $20,000 a year at the regional level, just they're there to get their flight time. Now, in today's world, with how much flight training is cost, it didn't make sense the last 15, 20 years to become a pilot, because why would I spend the amount of money to get my ratings with no guarantee where I can go, medical school or become a lawyer and make all the money right out of the bat and go buy my own airplane and go have my own fun. So I think that most of these businessmen and women created their own problem a long time ago, and it's finally catching up. And all the cities that we currently fly to, I wouldn't be surprised if some city pairings are lost because we don't have the coverage, and you're already starting to see that now with the regionals can't cover it. We've gone to the hub and spoke model, having flights every hour and a half to a hub for connections to now we only have one flight every 4 hours because on a bigger airplane, because we still have the seats, but we don't have the crews and we don't have the frequency now as I'd like. But I do see in next 3 to 5 years, all these regionals will probably, I wouldn't say be gone, but I'd say the majority of them will probably, like Delta has their own wholly owned with Endeavor. United, it'll be interesting to see what happens, which direction they go with that. And then here at Legacy, the 3 wholly owns, I could see at the bottom of our list. And not only pilots, but the airplanes, because let's just say 320 Neos right now. You can't get a new 320 Neo. Let's say you wanted to order one today. It's a good 8 to 10 years out to get a new airplane. So where are you going to get it? You got to have lift. So
8 to 10 years.
8 to 10 years. Yep. For a brand new 320 Neo.
Well, that's actually very discouraging because if Frontier has 22 Neos on order, that means they get priority. Yep. They already put in their orders.
Correct.
So if we say
all of these ultra low cost carriers, they put in those orders a few years ago. When everybody put in their big orders and they needed something to replace them with. So they've already been aligned for it. So I wouldn't be surprised if Legacy, if we end up getting the 195, the E2, we get the 220. They're going to need the lift, and I wouldn't be surprised as well. I don't know what the max seating is on a CRJ 900 and the 175. Now, if everybody stapled the bottom list, now the scope goes away. So you can add, I'm just guessing, another 15, 20 seats to that airplane. Yeah. So, and it all comes down to cost per seat mile. Every business person you talk to, what's the cost per seat mile on this leg? And that's what they're looking at. So
it's actually printed on our freight release, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So like you said, you can't pay a 175 cap and capped out at 76 seats, 300 an hour. What is it? 300 an hour for critical coverage. It doesn't make any sense. They're making more than a wide body captain with 300 seats. So it's not going to be sustainable for a long period of time.
Yeah. And those were a 2-year, temporary agreement,
correct.
So it's not like it's going to be forever. So there must be a bigger plan in effect.
Well, you say that now, Tony, but the reality is that the other regionals have put in longer term or even permanent pay increases. Sandpiper won't be able to snap back because you'll just see attrition get even worse. On that,
the whole point of that was to stop attrition, and if they're trying to stop it, and after two years, and if they're trying to stop it after 2 years,
and it hasn't really. That's the thing is, I don't think, and obviously I don't have any inside information here, but from what I've heard, it doesn't sound like the attrition has really stopped that much because you can't blame. I flew with Captain just the other day. He's 26 years old. We flew his last legs together because he's going to another Dallas-based, what we could call a major, former low-cost carrier, and
everybody's hiring.
Yeah, because you can't blame a young person for wanting to get on to somebody, to a top tier company's seniority list. It's all about where you are on the seniority list because at some point the music's going to slow down. So you've got to get to a list. So, but you touched on something, Kyle, and that's that scope clause. Where if you look at Europe and South America, Central America, they don't have that. So we were parked this morning. I came out of Aguas Calientes this morning in Aeromexico. There was a 190 right next to us. Alex and I are fully qualified to go fly a 190. We're type rated in it. We could go over there today. So you look at the 195 E2, I think that's good up into the low, 110, 120 seats.
Well, Mike, it's funny you say that. So I was on the 190 here my first 2 years. I was the baby in Tony and I's class. And that was the number one thing was we were flying this 190 around, not only doing the shuttle, but a lot of the second and third markets. All of our flights were full everywhere we went. And when they took it off of us and went to Republic, 175, we're going backwards now. We're losing those seats in the market, and they're selling seats on them. And they purposely capped it at 99 seats so they didn't have to have 3 flight attendants on the 190. But that was our number one thing. And then the number two rumor when I was there was, can you guys stay? We're looking at the 195 E2. And I don't know if you remember, but that's when the Profit Hunter was in Dallas. I think it was in Dallas 3 or 4 times within the year. So there were executives looking at it. Just nobody's ordered the 195 in the U.S. Nobody's has put in a big order for the 195 in the U.S. And you look at Legacy's history, and you look at the Super 80. that wasn't a very nobody bought in the U.S. until Legacy Care got it, and they got it for pennies on the dollar back in the 80s. So I'm wondering, our rumor was when they were telling us, "Hey, can you guys stay on the 190? We're going to get these airplanes." Well, crap, maybe we're getting the E2. It's in DFW. The executives are flying it around, and that was right when the time when Boeing bought out the E-Jet from Embraer. So we're like, they're gonna get this airplane for cheap, like they did the 80, and we're gonna be stuck here flying it at Group 1 pay, which that's another topic for our contract that we'll have to talk about at a later time. But they're gonna have to do something with the seats. We're going to have to go back to bigger airplanes flying the smaller routes. You're not going to have the frequency because we're not going to have the pilots, because everybody, just like you said, Mike, everybody's trying to get on a seniority list somewhere before the music stops. And not only does Legacy have all the retirements that we do, but so does everybody else.
Yeah.
You got Delta, United, friends at FedEx, UPS, Southwest. And we've even had new hires that have come here, pick a base where you want to live at. And historically, that's never really been the case. It's always been, whoever calls you first, that's where you need to go. And you don't know if you made a right decision until you retire. So a little different boat today, but I truly think that most of the regional model is going to be pretty much gone. I'd give it about 3 to 5 years at the most. Yeah. And we'll just see what happens. But for everybody right now flying and doing everything, everybody's in a good spot. The pay, the work rules are going to keep getting better and better. And going to be a fun career. Just like it was, I guess, in the 70s and the 80s. The
golden age of flying is coming back, baby.
History repeats itself, right?
So, well, they say every, 100 years?
Yeah. Hey, when you scare people away from the profession, it comes back sooner than later. So
yeah,
I'd like to think it's a different golden era, a new golden era.
Yes.
Pay, work rules, quality of equipment, and things like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And speaking of, we're talking about the industry, how it's changing, and what does that mean to someone who is going, I want to be a pilot? I mean, now is the time. We've been really pushing this on the show, and all it takes is a little bit of determination and dedication to a profession that will yield results. But you have to be willing to get creative, pay your dues, get that education down, get that flight time down. Don't be in a big rush. When you're young, you want it now. I want to fly the bigger airplane. You got the thrill of the polyester. I need that fourth stripe as soon as I can. And the reality is life is happening while you're planning it. It's now's a good time because the opportunities are bountiful. And like Kyle said, this industry is changing. And those that pay attention and that are open to trying different avenues, I mean, even later in life, you can make an absolutely good choice by choosing this career field. And we're seeing it right here with Mike and his story. Now, Mike, we're going to get to some Q&A about your journey a little bit later in the show, but I wanted to talk a little bit about some topics that we mentioned at the intro. Now, we've been talking about the demand for pilots, the potential for the regional system to be revamped completely because it just cannot sustain itself. And some of these regionals are desperate. As a matter of fact, from envoyair.com, Envoy Air is offering up to $100,000 to pilots on day 0. But hold your horses. That is not for everyone.
I wanted to add, Tony, today, I don't know if you guys saw it, but I believe it was Commuter. If you had they're hiring direct entry captains, $200,000 sign-on bonus. I think it was making $200,000 a year in a flow to United in 2 years.
Jesus.
agreement.
So, it really, it's the low hanging fruit here is these jobs.
Wow.
And this is amazing. Earlier, Alex, I think, mentioned that how unfair it was. Like, well, he got hired, and then all of a sudden these bonuses came after and stuff. And how do you think I feel? but
no doubt.
But Envoy Air, let's just go through how you can get this 100,000, and we'll have to look into these other airlines that are also offering this. But Envoy, according to their website, they're pleased to offer a new experienced pilot bonus for qualified first officers who receive a conditional job offer, or CJO, between November 15th, 2022 and December 31st, 2022. So get on it. You also have to receive a class date as early as January of 2023. The limited time offer will give $100,000 to qualifying pilots with more than 950 hours of 121.436 flight hours, and $75,000 to qualifying pilots with between 500 and 950 of 121 flight hours. The full amount of these bonuses after taxes will be paid on day 0, the day before training, for pilots in class by March 1st of 2023. In addition to these enhanced bonuses, first officers with more than 500 hours and 121 flight time will be eligible to receive a 50% pilot supply premium, and captains pay at 750 hours of 121 experience will also have their program still in effect. As we continue to grow, Envoy places massive importance of recruiting and retaining the best pilots in the industry, said Captain Rick Wilson, Vice President Flight Operations. As a result, there has never been a more lucrative time to be an airline pilot. Combined with our outstanding benefits, state-of-the-art training facility, and career advancement opportunities, there is no better place to be a regional pilot than Envoy. As a wholly owned subsidiary of American Airlines Group, Envoy offers guaranteed flow-through to American without having to interview again or compete with thousands of pilots who apply to American every year. From offering substantial sign-on bonuses on day 0, a growing fleet of 76-passenger Embraer E170 and 175 aircraft, and the increased benefits providing work-life balance for our pilots, quality of life, career prospects at Envoy are nothing short of outstanding, said Wilson. For more information, you can visit envoyair.com/pilots.com.
So here's the issue with that, right? And I'm not denying that these guys get a good bonus or anything like that. And by the way, if you guys want letters of rec written for you, I will gladly write you letters of rec. But here's the issue. You get hired on at Sandpiper as a direct entry captain. You're junior to me and Mike right now. You're junior to us.
Right. So why would
works for me?
You're going to, well, I know it works for us, but I'm saying you will perpetually sit on reserve for the next 3 years.
How much time are reserve pilots getting? Because if you do the math for direct entry captain, so you're getting $100,000 bonus, no questions asked, day 0. That's not even getting through training. I'm getting a 121 captain time. So if I'm flying 50 hours a month, 80 hours a month on reserve, even though you got a crappy schedule, okay, you're going to have that by a year and a half at most. So even if you're junior to everybody, that would set you up for going to a different airline.
Yeah,
if not, you have a job at the end of the day at American, but you're behind everybody. But
they're also
getting your PIC turbine.
And that's what they're getting. They're getting their PIC time, but they're also coming over here because they're leaving a different regional to get that.
Starting over again from the bottom of the seniority list, being on reserve, getting their line guarantee and only their line guarantee, maybe flying 50 or 60 hours a month, although the holiday season they'll probably be flying more than line holders.
Oh, yeah.
But that's all it is. It is a time building exercise. It doesn't promote loyalty. it doesn't promote them staying with the company, because the next company is going to come along, say a year down the road, and say, oh, by the way, if you come over now, we're going to give you a direct captain again. Why not?
There is a clause that is in the fine print. I think that's a 2 to 3 year commitment.
Yeah.
Unless they either flow or hire 2 legacy around the flow. So that's a pretty big chunk of change to have to pay back if they just jump somewhere else in another year or 2. Yeah. Not impossible, but
and that's how they're getting you, is they're using that 3-year guarantee. Okay, cool. You're gonna get $100,000, but now you're locked in for 3 years at Sandpiper.
Well, you just explained the whole cadet program, because that's what they get. They're paying for your ATP, CTP. They're paying for some flight time, possibly. They're helping co-sign on a loan. If you don't go to their airline, then who's going to pay that back? You are.
Yeah.
However, there's always a way out of it. There's always a way out of any sort of contract out there, because even our cadet program, it says that there's nothing in writing that states you have to come here, which blows my mind with the amount of money you're throwing at somebody to have them leave to go somewhere else. That's and I've had a couple cadets come up and say, Kyle, what happens if Delta calls or United calls? Even though Legacy fit the bill for it up front. It's like, well, there's nothing. If there's nothing you signed that had that written anywhere, then you're free to go. So there's always going to be some backdoor thing, and you can't really. It kind of reminds me of signing for a type rating. In my corporate days, there were operators that if you left after a year, you'd have to pay back prorated the training cost. However, it was a double-edged sword, because there were pilots that left, and their argument to these companies was, so if you guys fold, I'll have to pay you the training cost of that particular airplane. So there's no judge that's going to say you owe them money and they folded. Nobody's going to do that, and they're not going to go after you in court, because it's just going to cost too much money and time, and that's another issue. But there's always going to be a way out of a contract. So
I was going to say, there's the poaching is going to happen regardless of whatever's going on in the industry at a regional airline. If you work for, and I'll just use American, if you work for one of the American subsidiaries, one of the other major airlines is going to come poaching. That's just the nature of the beast. Mike and I had a classmate of ours, and it's funny because I was giving him crap the other day in one of our group chats because someone had chimed in about something and he piped up, and I was like, you don't even go here anymore, Delta. Like, calm down. Like, but he had gotten a CJO at Delta while he was in class with us upgrading.
Mm-hmm.
So look at, this is what I want you guys to look at. So with these bonus types, look at the other regional carriers that don't have some sort of flow with a legacy carrier. Look at Republic. Look at, I guess Mesa has one now with United.
SkyWest, maybe.
Look at SkyWest. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to not only cover some of the regional, they're getting desperate with the regional flying. They're trying to save the business model, but they're trying to poach those pilots away that don't necessarily have a flow, or maybe they're an older pilot group that I can go be a captain, I can make extra money, and I know I have a job at a legacy carrier in the next 3 years, 4 years, whatever it is now. So you got to start looking behind the curtain and seeing what they're trying to do and who they're trying to poach. And on the flip side, it brings flying back to the overall house, Legacy's house, mainline. Now, you want most of our flying, you want done either by us or the wholly owns. I don't want a third party airline flying routes, because they're I guess quality of service isn't going to be as great because they're flying, if that makes any sense.
Sorry,
so just
I have a cough.
But so just start looking behind the curtain. That's what they're doing right now. They're trying to poach everybody's pilots, and if you start thinking about not only that, but these other carriers that have airplane orders. Think about it. If guys let's say the SkyWest, I know SkyWest and Republic have airplane orders. If they start poaching their pilots, they're not going to need the amount of airplanes that they'll have to shrink.
Yeah.
So
who gets those airplanes?
Who gets the airplanes
right.
now? So you got to start thinking about that too. So
it's obviously a multifaceted.
There's a behind the scenes, behind the curtain narrative about all this, and we'll just watch it unfold.
Yeah, I think the lesson. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, I was saying, they've been throwing money at us now since what was that, June, I believe, Alex, when we were in class, and that came out, and I don't think it's really slowing down the attrition. So I think there's one lever left that American or Delta, anybody with a wholly owned, one lever they could pull left, and I think American did it many, many years ago, is they started assigning mainline seniority numbers when people upgraded to captain at the regional. But I've not heard any discussion about that.
That was and Tony can tell you about this since he was there. That was attested to a lawsuit that happened a long time ago.
Big one.
And a big one where 9/11 hit, they had some flowbacks, and the deal was at the time was we'll give, I don't know if it was everybody on the Eagle seniority list at the time or if it was just the captains.
So 1-to-1 to the senior captains. So 200
1-to-1. So
it's 260 something pilots, I think.
Yeah. So so they gave those guys seniority numbers right off the bat. When things started moving again and that time came, all the Eagle guys said, hey, you guys are hiring, where's our class state? And a Legacy pretty much said, what class state? So there was a big lawsuit of that, and they ended up having to give all the Eagle guys what they were promised were seniority numbers. But you're right, Mike. I do believe if they gave everybody some sort of seniority number today, the day one you start class, I think everybody would stay.
Or at least it would dramatically slow it down. You'd probably get some people leave because of better base opportunities or something like that. But
you think twice about leaving.
Oh, absolutely.
Have a buddy over there. He's a check airman with Sandpiper on the 175. He turned down his Delta CJL last year. He said, Kyle, I'm flying to American in a year with the amount of money I'm making right now. Doesn't make any sense, but I have a job next year at mainline. So he's like, I don't want to commute to Atlanta the rest of my 30-year career. That's what he told me. And I'm just jaw dropped, because if this was like 5-6 years ago, we what's wrong with you?
Well, and even with the direct entry captains that they're hiring right now, I just went on to mysandpiperair.com and logged in, and we can look up our pay rates. Year one for captain with that bonus and the 50% bonus is $146 an hour. Like, that's a ridiculous amount of money. They're pulling in $11,000 a month for that, and if you're getting a direct entry guy doing that, and coming over here, not only are you getting that $100,000 day zero bonus, now you're getting a $146 an hour, and that's up until data signing plus one. After data signing plus one, it goes to $150 an hour. So you're making six figures your first year if you're now a direct entry captain coming over to Sandpiper.
Yeah,
I'll have to look up mainline's Group 1 pay, but I know for a fact it's we'd be cheaper for Group 1 pay on mainline right now.
Much.
I'd have to look.
So enjoy
it up.
while you can. If they merge certificates, guess what?
And that's one thing we're fighting for right now contractually, but that's another
that's a whole other
session.
Topic of discussion. Now, and I really am grateful that you guys are bringing this up, because there are so many factors involved when choosing to apply to or go to a particular airline. A lot of it has to do with the individual's quality of life expectancy. Do they want to commute? Where do they want to live? What's the potential for growth? Is there a flow-through program? Is there preferential hiring? All these factors are individual and very personal. But my warning, as we've demonstrated here, all four of us have talked about it at some point in the last few moments, that you have to really be careful. So it's a very small industry, and there's always a big picture behind the curtain that we're not allowed to see. So it's important to kind of just soak it all in, make the best decision for yourself, and be patient, and just stick the flying, stick the job progression, stick your career progression, and put it in fast gear, and be patient, because it will turn out. All of this is going to change. What we're talking about here on this podcast today, and maybe even a few months, might be completely obsolete. So just keep that in mind, keep an open mind, and always know there's a bigger picture at play.
Absolutely.
And don't give up. Don't get discouraged. I said it earlier. Do not get discouraged. Just because somebody's not hiring right now. Like, I know the focus on Sandpiper is direct entry captains, because we're hemorrhaging captains left and right. Mm-hmm. Like, they've put a pause on FO hiring. So do not get discouraged. Like, let the time come. You'll get your opportunity to come work at Sandpiper or SkyWest or any of the others out there. Like, just give it time right now. That's basically it.
Mike and Alex, do you guys know how many captains at Sandpiper are going to be upgraded in the next 6 months? Do you guys know?
I don't. That's a good question.
We could probably look it up.
Yeah, and you kind of have an interesting dynamic at Sandpiper, because they're phasing out the 145. So you've got really kind of three groups of people. You've got the 145 captains that'll go through long school and become a 175 captain. You'll have the few remaining fairly senior 145 FOs that'll come over to 175 FO, that Alex and I will functionally move down the list again a little bit. And then you have some number of FOs that are rushing to get to 750 hours so they can get captain pay, and they're going to immediately start bidding reserve because they don't want to become a captain. And they're happy to have quality of life, good bidding seniority, and drag their feet getting to 950 hours to when they move over. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
There will be forced upgrades in the future, I can tell you that.
I saw forced upgrades at Sandpiper. I got hired during the era of flow back, flow through. That whole lawsuit, I learned about it when I was a new hire on reserve, dealing with the different problems with expired contracts and what at the time legacy, whatever GG wanted to get away with, how it went into litigation and how the judge ruled and how the original flow through the whatever 624 or whatever, I forget the number, but how that all transpired, and it was dirty, it was ugly. There were altercations between pilots within the same company. We saw the parking of the Saabs, we saw the parking of the ATRs, we saw the closing of bases, we saw Boston close, we saw New York close, Miami close, we saw the airline that was based out of San Juan completely get removed from the entire list. And all this movement that happened that at the time we thought was going to be a lot of impossible stagnation, but we got through it. And look at us now. Talk about the swinging from the pendulum. Now at Sandpiper, you got 2 airplanes going to one type of airplane, and the bases are not necessarily closing. They got most of those bases back.
And adding one.
Adding bases
Phoenix.
and wholly owns. I mean, whatever happened to that? They purchased the mainline carrier purchased another one. It was in direct conflict, but because now they can't fly for the other carrier, I believe it's United, because it's a contractual thing. So now we're hurting the competition, and I think that was really the whole purpose of that. The hurting the competition, which was hurting the ultra low cost carriers that had 80% of their new hires were coming from one of our wholly owns. And so how do we stop that? Well, we offer our pilots 400% pay, and they're not going to go over to Spirit Frontier now. And sure enough, guess who just announced that they're going to be giving signing bonuses, and they're hiring direct entry from CFI GA right into an Airbus for a new hire. Yeah. And they've got one of the largest Airbus orders in history. So it's be very interesting. They're opening bases every few months. They're someone that all the main lines have to keep a close eye on, because they're going to blow up just like Southwest did back in the day, just like JetBlue did not so long ago. Spirit's also another one, good contention to grow, but they have a PR problem. I think
Spirit also is getting phased in with Frontier. So once Frontier JetBlue. Oh, sorry, JetBlue. Yeah, that's right. The Frontier thing came out.
That's going back and forth. So we'll see what happens with that too.
Aren't the Airbus orders that Spirit has on the books one of the biggest reasons that Frontier wanted them in the first place? Because they needed those. That makes them pretty darn valuable.
Same business model, both of them had aircraft orders. It just made sense. The JetBlue Spirit, it will be interesting because they're supposed to actually take out seats on Spirit, and they're going to match JetBlue. And I was at JetBlue prior to Legacy Care, and it wasn't they weren't packing the seats, but they still had a few extra rows, but it wasn't the Spirit model at all.
Yeah.
Well, that'll solve the brand problem or the reputation problem, right?
Exactly.
Should.
Just get rid of that yellow paint. Yeah. Damn it.
Yep. So it will all be interesting to see, but they do have to answer your question. Yeah, they do have all the A320 Neo orders right now that most of the legacy carriers want.
Yeah. So it seems like this discussion's really, I don't know. I keep going back to how do we jump this chasm, because we've got the 1,500 hour rule with some exceptions with 1,250 and 1,000 for the restricted, but it's that gap. I mean, Tony mentioned that he took an ATP written at 300 hours, right? And that's where we were back before the Colgan crash in the legislation that followed that. I'm told that in the European carriers, many of them have their own academies, not just sponsoring young people like the cadet academies at some of the ones we have here, but I mean, actually bringing them through a program.
So what Lufthansa, for example, and I don't know if you guys have been out to Phoenix, but they have a big flight school for Lufthansa out. I think it's Mesa, Arizona. They start from day one. Not only your basic training, but SOPs. So that they can get away with that from day one because everything's very structured. It'd be like starting day one at a 121 carrier for training. Everything's structured. They're getting the cruise concept. They get more flight training based on they get a lot more high performance. They get a lot more complex. They get a lot more multi-time than what's required here in the U.S. However, that's just how their training's built from day one. Is very SOP oriented, and even on their cross country flying, I know they fly at 2-man crew. It's set up to, even though the switches are in the original spot that the manufacturer built the airplane, they still have crew response checklists. They fly with 2 pilots. That's how they do it. So that they can get away with that since it's a little bit more structured. Here in the U.S., there's so many different flight schools, and it'll be very difficult to align everybody up and doing the same exact thing.
It is happening
you gotta have
here,
the
though.
Resources in order to. Yeah.
Like
but you
Aviate.
also have to have the resources for the airplanes and the instructors and the buildings.
I think that's what's going to happen is that you see all these independent private flight schools around the country. They're going to start getting bought out. In my opinion, if you look back on this show 10 years from now, 5 years from now, mark my words, I believe all these small flight schools that are not connected with a bigger entity are going to get bought out. Look at what United has done also in Phoenix, the United Aviate Academy. I'm on their website right now, unitedaviate.com. Launch your career, captain your career, and it's a clear path to United. This is a wholly owned flight school by United. So when you go to Aviate, you're going to a United flight school, and you're going from zero on your road to captain on mainline. So we intend to hire more than 10,000 pilots in the next decade and have the largest fleet of wide-body aircraft in North America, offering you exciting opportunities to advance. This is on their header page. Growing pipeline of talent. They aim to hire 24% of the Aviate transition list each year at each participating United Express carrier. So you go there. It's a simple path. You take the flight training, and then you transition to one of their express carriers, and then from there, a flow of some kind to United. They offer the coaching. They offer the travel privileges. So you get United passes as soon as you're a private pilot student. I mean, the culture is to gain deeper connections with our United team with access to senior leadership, site visits and tours, and an inside look at our inclusive career, according to the Aviate website here. So yeah, it's happening already.
But the training hasn't been set to like what Kyle's saying on Lufthansa, where they're able to go from like day one in a crew concept and are able to kind of expedite their training to get through. Because I know that's what Mike was saying is like, how do we jump that gap going from, you're a 300-hour CFI instructor, and now you need to build 1,000, 1,250 or 1,500 to ATP standards.
You guys got to remember back in 2011, 2012, when the whole ATP thing out, just like anything government related, it looks good on paper, but they don't know how to back it. And you're right. That was the biggest mistake that they made for making it from 300 to 1,500 hours for your ATP here in the US, that they needed to put in. You need to get X number of multi-time, X number of high performance time, and structure it that way, going up to the 1,500 hours. Because quite frankly, all it says in there is you need 1,480 hours of any time, and then was it 20, 25 hours of multi-time to equal your 50. So there's, what's the point of going around the pattern at 80 knots doing touch and goes? It doesn't get anybody any rewarded experience. So I do think you guys are right. I do think in the next couple of years we're going to see more flight schools go towards the airline model, and maybe they can come back to the government and say, hey, listen, our flight schools right now, we're doing SOPs. They have our call outs from day one to by the time they get here. This structured all the way through. Can we get relief 1,500 hour? I think that's how you got to go after it.
Didn't Republic try that recently?
That's good.
Yeah, they
did. Well,
kind of.
Yes and no. Yes and no. All they came out with was, well, we're hurting for pilots. Can you guys reduce the flight time? Where's your backing with?
Well, I think the mistake they're making is they're because is it restricted? If you have a 2-year degree, it's 1,250, and if you have a 4-year degree, it's 1,000.
Yeah.
So if they could come up with a way to give similar credit.
And I think that's what's happening here. That these schools that are put in place, that they have to have a time frame where they're showing that, hey, the program is working. We can streamline it even further. We just need FAA approval. But they're not going to just go from the current model to a more streamlined model like Lufthansa can get away with, because they've been doing this for years and they don't have the requirements that the FAA has. So
you got to find a way to back it.
Yeah. And this is it. This is the first step.
But I think we do, and you look at big companies, big training companies like ATP and other ones like that. If they're already well structured and they can become a very standardized feeder for the big legacies, I think that's how we have to close that gap and give people a path. And quite frankly, there's another very important side benefit of this. In my opinion, this is where you focus the recruitment efforts for diversity and inclusivity. Those are huge buzzwords at the corporate levels, but the place to do that is getting people in the front door and get them all through the same exact standardized training program, so that we all, regardless of your background and regardless of what you look like and all of that, we all have to meet the same standard. And you do that early in the process, so that over a course of time, you end up with an inclusive, diverse workforce that all have a very high level of standardized training, but you meet that goal through the long game.
I think the number one hurdle for that, though, what has been a hurdle for that inclusion is the cost of training. That is the biggest hurdle, because when you look at the cost, who can afford it? Right.
I was just going to say the exact same thing, Tony. Like,
so how are you going to get minorities and people that come from diverse backgrounds into an aviation career when no one will even give them a loan? Because how the hell are you going to afford it? Because the statistics show that they don't have the means to provide that instruction.
Well, then the model's got to change. They've got to be recruited in high school and brought in and put on a payroll. Because if you look at the total, look how much money they're throwing at these direct entry captains and stuff now. If you back that money up and you hire somebody and give them the company culture, the company way of doing things from hour zero. I mean, some people are going to fall out of the training. They won't succeed, right? So you have to do a good recruiting, but then you're not asking them for money to get through that. You're actually saying, hey, you're now part of the family. Yeah. And we're going to pay you all the way through.
You're talking about company-sponsored training, wholly owned. So when I go to a flight school, I got hired at United at 0 hours, or I got hired at American at 0 hours. And I went through their training, and I didn't fail anything. I passed everything, and I started working there day one with 0 hours, and here I am now on the line. That's what has to happen.
The problem, though, with that is most of these companies don't want to go out and spend the money on training airplanes.
Right.
And the problem that we're going to get into is the disconnect from the third-party flight schools.
It's a huge liability, too.
Right. Liability. Third-party flight schools that we're using now, for example, they don't know apples of oranges of what we do day-to-day operation. They don't have that from us.
There's certainly ways to mitigate risk with, look at the wholly owns, right? I mean, so these Fortune 100 companies are more than capable of having different companies and things like that doing it. But it's as much the SOP, it's like you say, the Lufthansa model, right? I'm pretty sure that the company in Arizona that's teaching under the Lufthansa banner is...
I think the flight school is owned by Lufthansa.
Really?
It's all owned by, because the tails are painted Lufthansa. The flight, the hangars has Lufthansa.
Right, but from a liability perspective, it could still be a different corporation and all of that. And I promise you that the wholly owns, or the majors that are paying these big bonuses through the wholly owns, they don't want to do that either. There's no way they want to pay out this kind of money. It's really hard on the financials. So they may not want to do it, but they have to solve this problem with skilled talent, and recruiting it from day one may be the only thing they have left to do.
Recruitment, and it goes back to work rules and pay.
Well, and with recruiting to the lower common people, like people who aren't around the aviation industry, you know what I mean? Like, I grew up in it. Kyle, you grew up in it. Mike got exposed to it at a young age, and Tony came into it in his mid-20s. Like, we've got all different backgrounds of why we got into aviation. But you take somebody from the inner city who probably will never fly on an airplane their entire life and tell them, hey, you could come learn how to fly and you could do this. However, you're going to spend $150,000 they're not. That's not going to be their cup of tea. You
Right.
know, it's not going to be up their alley to say at 18 years old, hey, I'm going to drop $150,000 so that I can fly major airlines one day.
You can't ask them to do that. You're absolutely right. That won't work.
But that's also a systemic.
Systemic.
It's also a major problem with college in general. Is you're asking an 18-year-old kid
what they want to do.
Yeah, to make a decision on the rest of their life.
But wait a minute. We all knew what we wanted to do when we were 5 years old. If you offered this job opportunity to me at 18 years old, I really don't think I'd hesitate.
But that's the thing, is at 5 years old, I wanted to be a pilot. I also wanted to be an astronaut. I also wanted to be a firefighter.
Multiple personality disorder, if you ask me.
My therapist says I'm fine. Okay. Thank you.
Well, we really do need to move on, but we've all made some really compelling points. And I want to thank you, gentlemen, for chiming in on all of it. We do know that the system is flawed, and I really don't know of any system that's not. Unfortunately, a flawed system could end your career. And one pilot found this out firsthand. An American Airlines pilot, and this is an article from 1 Mile at a Time. I'll put a link in the show notes. This article came out November 6th of this year by Ben Schlapping, one of my favorite journalists. An American Airlines pilot was fired and had his pilot license revoked by the FAA after a botched drug test situation. And he's now getting some justice in court. The pilot didn't take the drug test that was intended for someone else. Now, before we go on, let's explain one thing. We've all been privy to this at this point in our careers. We are subject to random drug tests. DOT, FAA, random drug test. Your name comes up on some database, and some third-party company comes out with their clipboard and their little baggie, and as soon as the door opens, they tell the number one flight attendant, "Is your first officer Tony here?" And she'll go, "Yeah, he's here." "All right, let him know. He's drug test, random." And it usually happens towards the end of the flight, unless something happens en route or something. So it happens at the end of your sequence, and you go and you get paid for us, I think it's 15 minutes of pay. You go, you pee in a cup, they do the test in front of you, or you blow in the breathalyzer, and they show you the reports. It's all very official. And they send it all out. And it's a random drug test. And everyone is subject to it at any time. I got 2 drug tests in 1 month one time. Totally random, according to the guy. Now, this particular airline pilot...
Yeah, random for you.
Yeah, they're like, "I heard your podcast. You need another one." Airline pilots are subject to these random tests, which are totally fair when you consider how much responsibility they have. Here's a case where someone got fired over a drug test situation, even though they had nothing to hide. DeWitt Igram, who is now 64 years old, spent 21 years flying for American Airlines. Unfortunately, his career ended abruptly in August of 2020. He had just landed in Miami after working a flight. An employee from EON America, the ground service company that does drug testing for American Airlines, asked a flight attendant at the door for a pilot named Dave. Since random drug testing is performed by a contractor asking for a specific employee, Ingram informed the person that his name was not David, and that at that point he walked off the jet bridge and into the terminal. The following morning, Ingram awoke to several voicemails from American Airlines flight department expressing shock that he refused to take a drug and alcohol test. The contract worker performing the test had allegedly marked him as having refused to take the test. Given that he was upset by this misunderstanding, he scheduled tests, including blood tests, which showed that he had no drugs or alcohol in his system. Admittedly, alcohol might have been out of his system at that point, but we have no reason to believe that that was an issue since the test was random and not due to any kind of suspicion. Despite that, American Airlines fired him 2 months later, and the airline requested that the FAA revoke his licenses. Unfortunately, the incident had completely changed his life, as Ingram explains. That night, he says, was the end of all pay and benefits. I exhausted my 401k, sold any stock, I sold 2 cars to survive. Never in my worst nightmare could I have dreamt that my happy world of personal and professional achievements and pride could end up so disastrously as it did. It's been a long, dark hole in the ground prison, alone and told repeatedly to never tell anyone so as to protect me. While this incident happened over 2 years ago, details are only now emerging as this case is being heard in court, where Igram is getting some vindication. A judge ruled that the FAA took away Igram's license illegally. Furthermore, a judge is allowing his lawsuit to proceed in order to get compensation, as he is suing both American Airlines and EON America, the company that performed the drug test. The two companies were now seeking a dismissal. American Airlines and the FAA essentially took the stance that his failure to complete the test constituted a refusal, while the pilot repeated and consistently insisted that he had never been notified that he was selected for a random drug test, since the contractor said it was for someone named David. Unfortunately, even with a judge ruling in favor of Igram, he'll never be able to fly for an airline again. He's turning 65 in January of 2023, which is the retirement age for pilots. This is one of those situations where you almost have to wonder if there's more to the story than is not known. However, with the judge having now ruled on the case, it seems pretty clear that this is roughly what happened. How is it possible that a pilot not only gets fired, but has his licenses revoked from the FAA over what accounts to a miscommunication? You might assume, well, maybe he had something to hide, but clearly that's not the case, because he then volunteered to take the test and had no drugs in his system. Also, how was the union not able to do something to help? Isn't this one of the main purposes of the unions? That's why we pay our dues, right? To defend employees in situations like this. Now, of course, in retrospect, I think it's worth acknowledging that there might have been a better way to handle this. Airlines take drug tests very seriously and have zero tolerance with this kind of stuff. If a contractor came up looking for a pilot who wasn't on the flight, it might make sense to stick around and take some time to clarify rather than just walking off and moving on with your day. Did the contract just pronounce the name incorrectly? Or I could see how David could sound like DeWitt, or was the name verified in writing? And did it match? At least that seems like a good way to cover your rear. But I guess hindsight is 2020. And the article goes on if anybody wants to continue. But what's the lesson here? I've been subject to these random drug tests now for close to 20 years.
Show them a badge.
Yeah. Is this what you're looking for?
At the end of the day, so the random drug tests that I've had in DFW, it's actually been an airline employee that has come down with the clipboard and got you. That should be the first thing. There shouldn't be any sort of third party, minimum wage person coming up to you, because they have no idea at the end of the day.
Well, it should be something that's verifiable, not just a name.
Correct.
How about your employee number?
No, I've had.
We're all given employee number. Why not use that?
Everyone I've gone through, it's been with the Skewless company, and they come up and they say, "Are you so-and-so?" And they show you their paperwork. And you look at the paperwork and you go, "Okay, yeah, that's me." And they go, "Can I see your badge?" And they want to see your badge because they don't want like the captain or someone else to go, "Oh, no, I haven't been drinking. I'll take it for you." They want to make sure that they got the right guy or girl. So it's always been very official. The fact that this happened in Miami, of all places, didn't surprise me because the attitude might be a little different.
Yep. Language barriers, attitudes, like, oh yeah.
Well, and I mean, pushing David to DeWitt. I mean, maybe that's understandable if you have a little bit of a language barrier, but I mean, those names are at least in my mind, and I may be the only one saying this, they're noticeably different.
Yeah.
Noticeably different.
But I'd always go, "Let me see your paperwork."
Yeah.
Who are you looking for? Who are you looking for? No, I'm not David. Who are you looking for? I've actually had that happen to me once. They came down the jet bridge and go, "Are you so-and-so?" And I went, "No, I'm so-and-so." And I showed them my badge, just right here. And they're like, "Oh no, I'm on the wrong jet bridge." So that could have happened to me. But I just particularly showed them my badge going, "No, I'm so-and-so." And of course, then they're running because they have
to catch the other person.
Yeah. Well, and the whole thing of it, I feel bad for the guy because it was a shitstorm of something that happened that could have been completely avoidable had he had his union representatives with him and doing something about it. Like, that is something that, like, his union should have had his back.
And Alex, let me so let's back up a little bit on the union thing.
Uh-oh.
We have a lot of pilots here that refuse to pay their dues, so they do not get any.
Oh, really?
Yeah. With all the merger stuff over the years, people are like, I've been screwed this way, that way, this way. I don't want anything to do with the union. So they do not get representation on things like this. So
he could have been that guy.
He could have been one of those guys. Yep.
Okay.
There's a lot of what ifs. Yeah.
Yeah, they're all over the system. So we have a lot of people. Well, I shouldn't say a lot. There's probably about 10% that don't pay dues, that don't get the representation.
And there is another union out there too. I know Transworld pilots started their own union.
Well, I know that. I know that the Legacy Pilots Association is just it's in utter garbage from the stories that I've heard when I'm commuting.
Be careful. Be careful.
I'm just saying, like, I'm not trying to like stir up anything or anything like that. But some of the
you done did it, bro.
Historically, Alex, the union that we have now, it's always been about the top 20%, the wide body guys.
Yeah.
And gals that, okay, I want my money, I want my schedule, I want the good flying.
Yep.
We don't care about the narrow body stuff. Historically, it's been that way.
Well, now that's the stories that I hear,
and that's
all the time.
A lot of these people that have been, I won't say screwed, but have had issues with misrepresented. Good way to
underrepresented.
There we go.
That's the reasoning behind it.
Yeah.
So just, food for thought when you get into the history lesson of it. That's historically, that's what it's been.
I saw, and it may have been on the Aviation Business Information Board or Aero News, or I forget which one, but someone just posted recently that 67% of the legacy pilots are in favor of dropping Legacy Pilots Association.
They are wanting to explore the merger of the two. That's what that 67%.
And we've talked about that a little bit on the show before, how, what would happen if they did that? Would it change the dynamic of union representation? No, I don't believe so. I've been a member of both, actually. But I think that there's strength in numbers during negotiations and litigations that you can get from a nationally accredited union, like the Airline Pilots. What's it called? Airline Pilots Association. Yeah. So ALPA. There's a lot more strength there during times where a smaller union, even the Southwest, has their own private, the SWAPA. It's a great union, but could there be more strength in the fact that there's a national sect of this organization that represents more than one airline? And I think the answer is yes. You have more power in negotiations and in intel on what's going on at other carriers, maybe your competitors, maybe your allies in the industry. So there's definite benefits, I think. And there's also some negative aspects of it too. I've heard higher dues. I've heard longer to get things done. But we have a pretty big number between the wholly owns and the carrier itself, and that would be a pretty big contribution to ALPA if we switched over from Legacy's union to ALPA's union.
We're already ALPA,
right? Sandpiper and the wholly owns are already.
Yeah.
But I mean, just think if you had another 15,000 pilots also being represented by the same group, that adds to the ability to get things done.
So right now, it would make sense right now with any negotiations, because whenever you're in negotiations, you're already paying more in dues. And I know ALPA is 1.5%. I think just the regular, at least it was at my last carrier. And then I know APA, where we're at now, it's only 1.5% during negotiations, and then it goes back down to 1%. So it's cheaper during the off negotiation times.
Yeah.
However, on the flip side of that, though, if we would have got something when we, a year or so after we started back in 2017, I believe was the opener. It would have already paid for itself,
right? Yeah,
in the long term gain.
Well,
so
I was just gonna say, aren't you guys in a perpetual negotiation phase right now?
Yes and no.
Yeah, that's a whole other. That's a whole.
Yeah,
other,
that's a whole
that's
other
another show
podcast.
topic. Got it. Yeah,
we need to keep it going. Well, and thank you for that, gentlemen. It just goes to show you that you should always be prepared when a situation occurs and you have some kind of miscommunication that might be happening, maybe a crucial conversation. Pay attention. Hit the brakes. Take a deep breath and ask questions. Well, can I see your paperwork? Who's that for? I mean, there's a million things you can do. At the end of the day, I've heard this since the beginning of my career here in this industry. CYOA. Cover your own ass. Just
Ain't that
because
the truth?
they got it wrong, you have to think about it, work from the hearing backwards. How is this going to affect me? And make sound decisions based on that, and you'll have a long, fruitful career. And things can happen in a moment's notice, like a bird strike, like what happened on American Airlines 737 out of Miami just recently, a bird strike. According to simpleflying.com, American Airlines Boeing 737-800 suffered multiple bird strikes. We're not talking like doves, pigeons in here. We're talking about geese. Those
Big
bastards.
birds.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, every time I go to New York, I go to the hotel layover bar, and I always order a Sully. So, some water, 2 shots of Grey Goose and a splash of water. Though the aircraft was significantly damaged, no person suffered injuries. On Tuesday night, American Airlines Boeing 737 flew through multiple birds on approach to Kansas City Airport. Though the airport suffered quite a bit of damage, no person on board was injured. Now, these pictures have been floating around social media. It's pretty bloody. It's nasty stuff. The flight, which was Flight 1855, took off from Chicago International Airport on Tuesday at 8:17 local time, headed for Kansas City. Things were normal on board. And about 7.5 miles away from the runway they call it KCI, which that's not really the identifier, but okay. Near the airport, the 737 ran into numerous birds and declared an emergency. Upon landing at the Kansas City International Airport, fire and rescue teams met the trucks met the aircraft, and the 12-year-old Boeing in the incident is registered as November 844 November. The aircraft suffered noticeable damage on the nose, the engine cowling, and the left wing. The engine cowling, it's a typo there, appears to have taken most of the severe hit on the right side, on the number 2 engine. But the left wing's leading edge was also quite damaged. So, yeah, bad stuff.
2 things there. It was a Boeing, so it's built well. And then kudos to the crew.
Mm-hmm.
And let's just go through the crew shoes. So you're on the 7-mile final. You probably got I don't know. But you probably flaps 15, maybe 20. I think it's 15. Gear's not quite down yet. You hadn't hit the 5-mile mark. Your power is kind of set. Where I didn't look up the crew background, but you kind of know where the power settings are at for final with gear and flaps. I know that a lot of those guys on the 7.3 like to use flaps 30 instead of 40. So gear down 5 miles, set your power. Gear down, set your full flaps, and on the Boeings, I know it has a AOA. Unlike the Airbus, doesn't have the AOA showing there on your PFD. I don't know if they still had their AOA showing. I don't know. I don't believe the article said. I hadn't found anything else on it, but that and kudos to the crew for just getting it on the ground.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw the images from all the posts that you put on your Facebook page there, Kyle, the Aviation Information Business Information Board. Man, that's some significant damage, and you could tell immediately that those were some big birds that did that. And geese, I mean, that's like a turkey. Getting hit by, can you imagine getting hit by a turkey? Not just one, but multiple turkeys. If that was like a small GA airplane, that would have been it. That would have been done.
The fact that they were able to just continue and just go and land and do basically what their job was and not let what had happened kind of affect them, that they were still able to maintain their professionalism and composure and get down, basically land and finish their flight and then worry about everything else just goes to show like that they were the ultimate professionals in that regard, and that they managed to, those let's face it, those pictures look pretty nasty, and I'm pretty sure the engine picture, there's probably some substantial damage in that engine. One of those birds had to go through the core like that. You can't tell me that they didn't.
Aviate, navigate, communicate.
Yeah.
Fly the airplane. Know your power settings. That's why they tell you guys, know your power settings wherever you're at in flight, because it could come down to that by loss of instruments, freezing up, losing your pitot tubes in that instance, damage, and just get it on the ground.
Yeah. Oh, they did exactly what they should have done and just got it on the ground. And kudos to that crew.
Recently, we added a new segment to the show. A former guest of ours, Captain Keith, has been traveling all over the world. He is a 777 captain for Legacy Airlines, and he's been sending me updates on where he's been, everywhere from London, Miami, Istanbul, and beyond. And he recently attended and was a headlining speaker at EON Experience Fest 2022 in Istanbul, a game-changing strategy for aerospace. I'll put a link in the show notes for his YouTube video on what he presented. Also, he's been sending me links on different events with aircraft from Legacy Airlines and beyond. Captain Keith recently sent in a video to the Squawk Ident podcast from his adventure layover in Athens, Greece. Let's listen in.
Hello again, Squawk Ident friends. Captain Keith here. After 2 days off from my Frankfurt trip, I'm off again to Athens, Greece. Athens is a great city, and it's my first time operating a flight in there. Our layover hotel was the Divani Caravel Hotel in a nice part of Athens with a lovely rooftop bar. Perfect view of the city from that vantage point. So I started my layover with a little walk around the city. Lots of lovely cafes and restaurants. This was a Sunday, so a lot of things were closed, but I did find a first stop for coffee. Not too busy in the afternoon when we got there. And then continued walking around some more and found an area that was the Greek guards guarding one of the government buildings, and then took a stroll through the National Garden. Lots of people were out, some people with their dogs, mostly people with their children. It's a lovely day for a stroll through the park. I see a lot of people on the bridge there that were walking across. Lots of ponds and fish and turtles, things like that. And then I came upon the sundial, which predates Big Ben in London a little bit, but that's the Greek technology of the day. And time looks pretty accurate for the time of year we're experiencing. A little farther along, we're walking past a collection of old cannon. And then we get to the area known as the Plaka. This is kind of the main tourist shopping and restaurant zone. A lot of people out on this Sunday. And of course, I had to stop and get a traditional Greek salad. There's no lettuce in a traditional Greek salad, so it was interesting to have that. And one of the streets, you can see the top of the picture there, a view of the Acropolis on top of the hill. And a little bit more of a walk through the town. A little bit of video to show you what the foot traffic looks like. closer view of the base of the Acropolis. Didn't get a chance to go up to it and go through it, but I'll do that on another occasion. This is a restaurant very close to the base of the Acropolis. A lot of people having lunch there. And lots of cats running around that are guarding the monuments. They don't seem to mind my presence. Back at the hotel rooftop pool bar for one more espresso before heading off for dinner. And the lovely sunset over the Acropolis. That's my layover in Athens. Hope you enjoyed that and hope to see you here sometime soon.
I just want to take a moment to say thank you very much to Captain Keith for keeping us updated on his travels and his layovers. Some really cool video. I'll do my best to soon put these videos up on our YouTube page for Squawk Ident. So keep that in mind. The best way to not miss a video is to go to YouTube, follow, and click on that bell on the YouTube channel at Squawk Ident Podcast.
Where is Captain Keith? Okay.
Well, Mike, we promised you some Q&As. Let's just ask you some really quick questions, and then we'll wrap it up for today. I know we're going a little long. First off, just want to, again, say thank you for joining us and sharing your story with us. Now, you know what you know at 55 years old. Go back to when you were in your early 20s, flying, building time wherever you could, being a hangar rat, and just doing stuff. What would you have done different?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. It's tough to say because I really appreciate a lot of the things that have happened in my life, my son and all those things, which they potentially wouldn't have happened. But pursuing aviation and continuing to push forward with it, that might have been the path. That might have been the path. I had a great path, but if somebody thinks that aviation is a passion for them, confirm it. Go do more discovery flights and things like that and fly with other people. And if it's your passion, don't give up. Just keep going. Just keep pushing.
All right. What's your biggest regret so far in this career path?
Honestly, I wish I had kept my logbook passionately accurate every time I flew. I took it for granted. It wasn't back when I owned my own airplane in my own place. I went and just flew for 20, 30 minutes. I wasn't as detailed because I didn't think I was actually going to make this path. So anybody new that's listening, treat that logbook as it's your life story. Passionately guard it. Enter it in every day that you do something because it is your history. It's not just because important people are going to look at it when they're considering you for employment, but it's also something for you to look back on. Oh, remember when I did this and all of that. That is something I wish I had done in greater detail because it tells the big picture story. A lot of fun was had in the past, and a lot of fun flying was done, and that's your story.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. You actually reminded me of a film that I saw many years ago, and I had to buy this DVD. It was DVD, digital video disc, folks, before streaming. And I actually was playing it at the film school, or at the flight school that I taught at on a loop on all the monitors. It's called 1-6 Right. And at the beginning of that film, there's an older pilot, and he's talking about his logbook, and he said that when he was filling out his logbook, he's always logged everything. And on the front cover, he wrote a little poem to his logbook saying, "This is a love story." And I remember watching that and thinking, I'm never going to stop filling out this logbook. As a matter of fact, I'm often teased on the flight deck. Just yesterday, here I am filling out my logbook for the day. And Cap was like, oh, you still filling that stuff out? You don't need to do that anymore. I stopped doing that 20 years ago. I'm like, no, sir, this is my love story.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Now, in all your years of flying, what has been the greatest unseen hurdle that we have not yet experienced about your journey that you can tell us about?
Meeting me.
That's a challenge.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of something that would be a good lesson, a good takeaway. You're going to pay your dues one way or the other. I paid my dues in my IT career and all of the struggle and all of the many, many hours of things that I had to do, didn't want to do, bad pay, things like that. So if somebody's purely flying, don't be impatient and pay your dues that way.
Yeah.
So if that makes sense.
Yeah, you're going to pay them one way or another.
That's right.
You definitely paid them in your previous career.
Yeah, I just paid the dues to get to a successful point to pay for my own flying, but I still had to pay my dues to get to that level of success.
Yeah.
If you could go back to your younger self and just give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
Just keep pushing forward. Don't give up. And always do things with professionalism and integrity. They matter.
Yes, they do.
Don't cut corners. Don't take the easy path.
Well said. Absolutely well said.
I got one more question. Who would you say has been your biggest mentor / influence to get you where you are today? Doesn't have to just be one person. It can be, a collective. But who's, because Tony always preaches this, right? We're always thankful and use the other aviators to basically stand on their shoulders. We stand on the aviators' shoulders who have gone before us, right? So who
that's
to
true.
you has been that person that has bumped you up, who's given you that right piece of advice in this moment?
By name or just in concept, it's a friend of mine that I've had for 30 plus years. We were actually computer geeks together.
It's not Alex, is it?
No, it's not Alex. He's a recent addition to my my motley band of friends.
Mike could legally be my father.
Hey.
Are you my daddy?
I'll show his age there.
So if you're a friend you've known for 30 years.
A friend I've known for 30 years. We were computer nerds together, and he's the one that I told you that went through and bought and sold different airplanes, and he followed his passion, and he got into Eagle back, when was that? Probably late 90s. Got into it there, and he rose up to the ranks there, and he was constantly sharing stories and things like that, and he's the one that I learned a lot from, and he's the one who encouraged me to go through a regional 121 training program and just experience it, learn from it, and become a better pilot. And so, I don't know that I would have done it without listening to his advice.
Yeah. And it's so important to do that. And I think it's important to ask those questions. Thank you, Alex, for asking that, because it reminds us, as you mentioned, how I often say that we stand on the shoulders of all those that lifted us up to be here, to get to reach our goals, to be here. But it reminds us just to acknowledge that. And can you imagine sending in this day and age a text saying, "How can I ever repay you for what you've done for me?" How that would make that other person feel. Thank you. For being a friend, for being a mentor, for being someone, so you're very important to me. I mean, we often wait until the holidays to send a Christmas card that says, "Merry Christmas from the blah, blah, blah family," with nothing else written. And that's fine. But can you imagine how much more you would cement the bond of friendship and love if you just take a moment and recognize all the people that have helped you attain your goals and your passion? It just takes a moment. And I'm often reminded of the words of Robin Williams, who he once said in an interview, "Be kind to each other, because you never truly know the battles the other person is fighting." So be kind.
Realize there are a lot a lot of amazing people out there to be grateful for, and a loving God. And that, other than that, good luck. That's what life is about.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us, Mike. We really did appreciate your story, your feedback, chatting with us about the industry and what the future can hold. It's actually very exciting. If I came into the industry now instead of when I did, man, I think I'd be a lot more excited about moving forward and being a lot less patient as I was, because I knew I was when I started and I was like, okay, it's going to be a while. And when I got hired at Sandpiper, it was a 14-year upgrade at a regional.
Ooh.
Oh,
granted, I upgraded in 5.5 when I finally got to upgrade because of the bankruptcies and all that stuff.
What was your initial pay rate?
God, I think it was 28. Maybe 26, something like that, for the first year, and then it jumped to like 40 something, which was not as low as some, but definitely not six figures. I mean, I could have easily been on food stamps, single earner of a family of 3. And they actually put that in our manual. I remember that year they put it in our manual. Do not show up for government subsidies and government welfare programs in your pilot uniform, because pilots were doing that just to prove a point. We've come a long way, ladies and gentlemen, and be grateful.
Yep. Absolutely.
Well, I really do hope that all of you listeners out there enjoyed listening to the show today. I want to thank Alex and Kyle for joining us today. A very special thank you to Mike Airhart for sharing his journey with us. And we hope that all of you out there enjoyed listening to The Flight. Please pay it forward by sharing this podcast with your friends and your family, and even online on social media or TikTok or whatever you're doing out there. I have no idea. Make sure to subscribe and follow to the Squawk Ident podcast on whatever platform you're listening on. Yes, Spotify, Apple Music, and all the podcast 2.0 apps out there. They're just fantastic. We also love receiving listener feedback. You can send us an email or even some audio feedback via our website at www.aviatortony.com. That's Alpha Victor, the number 8, Romeo Tango Oscar November Yankee.com. Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram users can also find us under Squawk Ident Podcast. One final thank you to all of you for taking the time to listen to these grateful aviators. Keep the dirty side down out there. Be safe and take care of each other. See ya.
See ya. Oh, man. Do I fly with you? I had a captain do that.
That's when you take their picture or video and be like, if you ever do that again, I'm posting it.
It's an entirely different kind of flying.